FANS, Passions, Brands, putting it into context, has been a 2-year study. We first did football last year, and then this year we worked on music. We did this in 17 countries, about 18,000 people. And some of the key takeouts that we found, over and above understanding why people like music, but what the triggers of engagement are. And that was really important, because the majority of studies that do these kinds of things, it's, am I a super fan, am I a casual fan, do I like it, do I dislike it? And people actually don't engage that way about anything they're passionate about. So we have 8 logics of engagement, which is actually the same number that we had when we did football, but the difference is a new one called exploration. And that's kind of this whole sense of discovery and how I discover music and what are the things that I go through to discover music. So coming out with the 8 logics of engagement, in addition to that, the findings were kind of interesting in the sense that a huge portion of the population around the world is still buying CDs. And everyone's talking about, oh, you know, CDs are dead or records are dead and it's all about downloading and streaming, but actually that's not the case. So there's quite a mix of things going on around the world. Specifically in South Africa, I have to reference my notes here because I'm never going to remember all of this, is that versus the global average, which is about 56%, South Africans listen to music several times a day, it's 72%. So there's certain like banal things you would think everybody does exactly the same, but certain markets, in particular South Africa, score much higher than other markets. If we're going to compare it to what we did within football or sport, so 99% of South Africans are at least slightly interested in music versus sport at 91%. And again, I don't think people really think about that because so many nations are very heavily football oriented, and that's kind of the only thing that you think about when you think, oh, sport, football, South Africa, whatever it might be. But actually the music component comes out much higher, and because I think it's an intrinsic part of everyone's daily life, whereas sport is oftentimes very much linked to a moment in time, i.e. a World Cup or a national team game, things like that. One really positive thing, in comparison to the rest of the world, 59% of South Africans legally download music versus illegally, and the global average is 49%. So you guys are definitely law-abiding, which we like. And certain genres of music came out quite differently within South Africa. So the key music listened to, interestingly, is gospel and Christian at 13% versus 4% globally, R&B at 12% versus 3% globally, and then pop was actually lower. Pop music was only 9% versus 12% globally. So there's just these little subtle differences that are coming out, which we think are quite interesting because it's a way of differentiating if you're a brand and you're looking at, well, how am I going to engage people? So oftentimes when we get briefs from companies, they're very specific. It's a demographic. We want to talk to 18 to 34-year-olds. We want to tell them this. But they're thinking about it as an audience and that everybody thinks exactly the same. But what we realize with the logics of engagement, and certainly the information that's come out of it, looking at it country by country and then globally, is that you're never just one thing. Like, you fluctuate between the logics depending upon the time of day, where you're at, who you're with, what you're doing. So I'm trying to remember all the logics right now, but it's play, mastery, immersion, advocacy, exploration, a couple of others in there that I can't remember right now. But you kind of go in and out of those different logics. So what we've started changing our dialogue when we talk to brands and say, rather than think about a target audience, why don't you think about a mindset? Because it's very easy and a little bit narrow to say, I just want to talk to this group of people. So you end up ignoring this whole other group of people. So let's say play is the logic that resonates the most. In South Africa, it's one of the top 3 logics. So that could be real play in terms of music. It could be an instrument. It could be jamming with your friends, or it could be virtual. It could be something you do online and mixing. So if play is the most prevalent logic, and you know that about the people in South Africa, you can use that to your advantage and start talking about a mindset. So how can I engage lots of different people in this particular logic, because I know that resonates. And that gives you a lot of flexibility and creativity and allows you to go further than you might normally go versus I want to talk to that demographic.